Okay, so I sat down last night and I wrote down 10 things, do's and don'ts. And I'm going to go through it point by point now with you. Okay. So, how to deal with watercolor paper that buckles. Number one, don't use as much water. But wait a minute, you like to paint wet on wet. All right, well, then ignore point number one. But seriously, I'm not trying to be snarky. Maybe you are using too much water. Maybe you're flooding on too much water. Maybe you could manage with a little bit less. So think about that. Okay, point number two, don't use a block. Now, I know there's at least one person in this class who uses a block all the time. I haven't used a block for many years. A block is basically a pad that's glued on all four sides. When the paper is glued on all four sides and it gets really wet and it starts to buckle. Oh, by the way, what makes watercolor paper buckle? Oh, good question. It buckles when the fibers in the paper absorb water and they get bigger when they absorb the water. And so the paper literally gets bigger. And if it gets bigger and it's glued down on all four sides, where does it go? It poofs up. It buckles. A block, I think, is a really convenient thing to have. If you're painting plein air, it's convenient to take a block with you. If you're traveling, I guess even if you're going to a physical class, it's just a little more convenient. Otherwise, I recommend don't use a block. Likewise, don't use tape. Don't tape your painting down on all four sides. Same reason. If you tape it down on all four sides and the paper gets wet and it starts to expand, it's got nowhere to go but up and it's going to buckle. And I just want to say one thing. If you absolutely must use tape, please don't use that bright blue tape. Please, please, please don't use that blue painter's tape. You know why? I'm just going to say two words: simultaneous contrast. That blue is so strong, so intense. Anything in your painting that's anywhere near that tape is going to be influenced by the color of that blue tape, right? We all know that now. So don't use that blue tape. If you must use tape, then use plain old masking tape, which is nice and neutral and it's not going to influence your color via simultaneous contrast as strongly. Okay. Now I'm going to take you over to my painting table just for a minute, if I can find it. Here we go. All right. So here's what I recommend. Okay, just want you to know this. This is what I recommend. Clips. All right, so here's your demo. And you can see it's not taped. I can, because it's not taped, I love to be able to pick it up, rotate it easily, turn it upside down, curl it. If I want to get my paint to move, I can curl the paper. I can twist the paper. If I've got too much water on the paper, I can literally hold it upright and the water just pours right off of it. It's super easy to do this. If it starts to buckle, then I take my bulldog clips, and I've got four of them, and I'll put one clip, let's say, in the upper left corner. Then I pull really, really hard on the opposite corner. This painting is dry, by the way. We have to pretend that it's really wet. I can tug really hard on the opposite corner, actually any corner, but usually I go for the opposite corner. I tug on it really hard. Don't worry, you're not going to rip your paper by tugging. So I tug really hard and I put the next clip on. Then I'll tug on the other two corners one at a time, and I put the other clips on. And by tugging it and clipping it, that will help to flatten it while I'm working on it. And when it dries, it usually dries pretty flat. So that's what I prefer to do. Now, for my painting boards, I just want to show you what I use. My preferred boards these days are masonite board. This is just a masonite board, and you can see when I tip it up, it's really skinny. Here it is next to my finger. It's really skinny. Now, for the longest time, I was using gator boards, which is it's got a foam center. You can see it's thicker. Oops, it's thicker. And it's got a foam center. And then both sides have a hard, I don't know, it's probably a little bit of laminated plastic. The gator boards are very lightweight, lighter weight than the masonite, but I actually find that for me, it's easier to get these clips on. They have a lot of tension. And it's easier for me to get the clips on a skinny little gator board than a heavier, I'm sorry, a skinny little masonite board than a thicker gator board. Okay, so that's the way I handle that with my painting board and my clips.
Alexis,
Okay. Yes.
how big is that? What did you call it? Bulldog clip?
Oh, these are bulldog clips. I think this is the biggest size I have, and it's almost 3 inches wide.
Wow. Okay.
They come in different sizes. Um,
The other one is small. The other one you have pinned up there is smaller.
this one is this is about 2.5 inches. This one's about 3 inches.
Okay. Thank you.
I actually find the 3 inch ones a little bit better. They are a little easier to squeeze them. There's a lot of tension in them, which holds your paper really, really tight. Okay. If you are going
Alexis,
to take,
the Exacto box calls them Boston Bulldog clips.
okay, whatever. Um, I will say one thing. If you're going to if you're going to clip your painting, I'm really careful when I put the clips on oops, when I put them on, I try to only cover about 1/4 of an inch. You might be tempted to put it on this way. They do tend to leave a groove in the paper because of all that pressure. So if you put it on the whole way, you're going to end up with a groove like an inch in from the edge of your painting. So I am very careful to put it in. All you need to do is overlap it about 1/4 of an inch, and it'll hold it really firmly, really tightly. And if it leaves a groove, that groove's going to go underneath the mat if you put it into a mat in a frame. So just a bit of advice there. Okay, I'm taking this off screen. Now we're going back to the gator board. Let's zoom back out. All right, this is not going to be the most exciting thing you've ever seen happening, but what I want to talk to you now is, and I did mention this briefly yesterday, uh, when I was talking about the issue of buckling, and that is try stretching your paper. And I said very briefly, I never stretch paper anymore, which is basically true. I basically don't ever do it. It's just, I feel that it's not necessary. I really feel like the bulldog clamps work just as well as anything. But here's something that you can try. Stretch your paper. All right, now here's the easiest way I know to stretch a paper. I do it using a gator board, and you'll see in a minute why. Okay, here's a piece of 140-pound paper, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stretch it for you real quick. You wet the whole thing, and you can wet it with a brush like this, and you have to wet both sides. All right. The whole idea is that you get it soaking wet on both sides. The water travels through the paper and meets somewhere in the middle because both sides are saturated. Okay, side number one, I wet with my brush. Side number two, I'm going to wet with my spray bottle. Okay, you can do it either way. All right. So I'm just giving it a good old spray here. Want to make sure that you get all of it covered. All right, so here's the deal. It's wet on this side now and the other side. When I want to stretch paper, now I'm in a hurry this morning, so I'm not going to wait. I'm just adding a little more water. All right, so what's the deal with stretching paper? All right, well, remember what I said. When paper gets really, really wet, all those little fibers inside absorb the water and they start to swell, and then the paper starts to buckle. Now, I'm not noticing a lot of buckling. When the paper is really wet on the back, it tends, um, this is, I should have cleaned off my gator board before I started. Let's just spray that off. That just picked up a little stray paint from the gator board. Okay, let that be a lesson to you. Um, what was I saying? Oh yeah, those fibers start to swell. Yep, and so the whole paper starts to swell and it starts to buckle. If it's wet on the back, it's not going to buckle as much. It kind of gloms onto the board. You might see at this point, I'm looking, you might see a few poofy places. Sometimes air gets trapped underneath it. So at this point, what I generally do is I pick it up from the corners and squirt in a little extra water just to make sure that it's super wet. And it really is. If I were to pick this up now and tip it, water is kind of gushing out from underneath the bottom edge. All right, that's good. Now to stretch it, here's what I do. Plain old stapler, an office stapler. All right, are you ready? I'm going to staple now. And this is why I use a gator board, because the staples go right in. This would not work on masonite. Staple. This is not very exciting. I know. I staple about every 2 inches, separated by about 2 inches. Again, I'm trying to keep the staples no deeper than about a 1/4 inch from the edge. I try to get at least one staple in every corner, at least on one side of the corner. There we go, almost done. You can see it doesn't take super long to do this. Now that I've started, I have to finish. A half-stretched piece of watercolor paper is just worthless. All right, so what's the deal? While I'm finishing the stapling, I just want to say that when the paper dries, and you got to wait a few hours because it's really saturated. Okay, stretched. This is a piece of stretched paper now. You can see all those staples around the edges. You see that? So what I'm going to do now is just take this board with the paper and put it into a dry place and let it dry for about 2 or 3 hours. And it's going to dry really tight, because I'm putting the staples in when it's stretched out, it's expanded as much as possible. I did that with all the water. So when it dries, the paper's going to shrink back. And it's kind of, you can't really see it. It's not that great of a shrink and an expansion, but it's going to shrink back just enough so that it dries. It's tight as a drum. And when you paint on it after it's been stretched, it's not as likely to buckle. Okay. So that's all about stretching for you. Okay, take this away. Okay, did you all get that okay? Yeah.
Got it.
Stretching. All right. I'm still, I think, only on point number 5. There's more stuff to say. Okay, point number 6. If you don't like the buckling, guess what? You can use 300-pound paper. Usually, I prefer 140 because I like to be able to curl it and twist it and do all that fun stuff with it. Um, you can 300-pound paper is it almost feels like cardboard. It's so heavy. It's twice as heavy as 140-pound paper. Guess what? It's twice as expensive. But that might be the solution for you is to use 300-pound paper. You can also buy something called watercolor board, which is essentially watercolor paper that's been glued to an acid-free board that makes it into more of a cardboard-based panel, but acid-free. You can try that as well, and it's not going to buckle either. All right. Guess what? Stretched canvas. Lots of us use that over the last several weeks. A stretched canvas or a canvas on a board, not going to buckle. There's another product called Aquaboard, Aquaboard, not Board, Board. Um, and I haven't done a demo on that in a while, but that's a board. It's actually a wooden board with a processed top that you can paint on. Won't buckle. You can try that. And guess what? The other really fun thing is that you can paint on that won't buckle. Yupo, plastic paper, won't buckle. So there are alternatives. There are probably other surfaces that I haven't mentioned. These are the ones that I use. But you might even, in fact, if somebody else has another surface that you've used that you like that doesn't buckle, Stacy, you're our non-paper painter in the class, and I know you've tried many different brands of canvas, but
Yeah, I mean, I like the stretch canvas. I think the best canvas board. It doesn't buckle, but um, I don't know. I feel like there's more texture in the
Mhm.
fin. If you want texture in your painting, then that would be the way to go. But the stretched one, it's just much smoother. So,
Well, that
but
also
neither
depends
one of
on
ours
the
does buckle.
that also depends on the brand that you're using.
Yeah, and
Some
I
of
mean,
the
you
brands
can
of
always prime
canvas.
it. Yeah, you
Hmm?
can always prime it, with like gesso or something like that to make it nice and smooth. If you
Hmm.
gesso paper, will it buckle?
Yeah, I was just going to say that gesso paper will buckle because a certain amount of water actually still. Can you all please mute? I'm getting lots of feedback all of a sudden. Thank
Oh,
you.
that might be me. I'm sorry.
If you use gesso paper, I don't think it buckles as much, but some of the water. Stacy, can you mute, please?
Yep.
Some of a little tiny bit of water can still get through that gesso. I don't know how it does it. And so you might have a little bit of buckling, but probably not as much. Okay, now, wait, first, are there any questions? Okay, now, Margie. Yes, Margie. Margie, you need to
Do
unmute.
you ever iron the back?
I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm getting to that. Here we go.
Great.
I'm going back over to my painting table now. Now I'm getting more into where Marcia is going to get her questions answered. Marcia, I don't think your questions were primarily about what I've been talking about up until now. What I've been talking about up until now is more answering Nancy Elizabeth's from yesterday. But
But
Marcia,
it's
I
super
believe,
helpful.
okay, good. But
Yeah.
Marcia, I think primarily you wanted to know about what to do when a painting is dry, finished and
Yeah.
dry, and it's still kind of curvy, and you're concerned
Or
about
lumpy
or lumpy, okay, and you're concerned about putting it
sometimes.
into what? Did I miss something? Okay.
No,
And you're
not for
concerned
me.
about putting, maybe this is feedback I'm hearing. If you all can mute, that's so funny. Yeah, and you're concerned about putting it into a mat and having it kind of do this inside the mat, all right? And sometimes that happens. So let me show you what I do. And I'm going back over to the, going back over to here. Okay. So I think this was your demo from a few weeks ago. I think this was the Tuesday demo, not the Monday demo. I sometimes forget. All right. This painting dried and it's pretty flat. It's got a little bit of lift right here in the upper right corner, but I'm not concerned about that. Once this goes underneath a mat, it's going to be fine. But let's just say that it was curvy enough, or to use Marcia's word, lumpy enough, so that I was concerned. What I would do is I take the painting. First of all, this is just a big white sketchbook, all right? So the first thing I would do is put the painting face down. Oh, look, it's got some stuff on the back. I would put the painting face down on top of a piece of clean white paper. And then I take my spray bottle and, well, I'll spray it. I wasn't planning on it, but just lightly spray it a few times. Okay. All right. You don't want to totally saturate it as if you were going to stretch it, just to get a little spritz of water all over. Okay. Then you take another piece of clean paper, make sure it's clean, and put it right on top. And you can smooth it out with your hands. Then I like to take a sheet of glass or plexiglass. This is plexiglass that still has the protective plastic covering to keep it from scratching, but this is just a sheet of plexiglass, you can see. And I take that and I put it over the painting. And then I take some of my art books. I've got so many art books. And I just pile them up on top. They're heavy. This is 2 of them. More likely, I would put 4 on top. And then I set this aside overnight and I let it dry. By the next morning, it's almost certain to be nice and flat, and I don't have to do a thing. Okay? Now, as Margie asked, Margie said, do I ever iron it? And the answer is, if all else fails, yes. Ironing a painting, and I've done it numerous times, plenty of times, it's pretty scary. So here's that painting, and it's still inside the paper, spritzed on the back, because that's what I would do if I want to iron a painting. Again, I sandwich it in between 2 pieces of clean paper, spritz the back. Then I get out my iron, and I usually set it on a medium temperature, like maybe steam, kind of in the middle. This is a really old iron. And then I very carefully just iron the whole thing. And here's what makes it scary. You start ironing it, and every one of those little water droplets that you sprayed starts to hiss and spit and pop, and it scares the heck out of me every time because I'm just worried that it's going to incinerate my painting. I have yet to incinerate a painting. It'll flatten the painting pretty well. But like I said, it's pretty scary to do that. I really try to do this method, weigh it down with books. And since I've wet the back of that painting to show you, now I have to follow through and weigh this down. And I'm going to take it off screen. Hopefully you can stop here, Marcia. or anybody else. But you know, if you need to iron it, take a deep breath, be really careful. Make sure don't iron directly on the painting. I always have a piece of barrier paper in between the iron and the painting. And take it really slowly. You might even want to start your iron on an even lower temperature and see if that works.